It takes an average of 10 to 15 years and over $2.5 billion to bring a single new pharmaceutical treatment from a laboratory concept to a patient's hands. In an era where artificial intelligence can rewrite software code in seconds and generate photorealistic landscapes in milliseconds, this glacial pace of medical innovation feels almost archaic. Headlines routinely declare that AI has designed a novel therapeutic compound in a matter of days, promising a revolution that will cure diseases at breakneck speed. Yet, the anticipated flood of next-generation medicines has not materialized at your local pharmacy. The disconnect between computational velocity and medical reality presents one of the most fascinating paradoxes in modern business and science. To understand this bottleneck, we must first separate the digital triumph from the physical reality. The earliest stages of pharmaceutical development have indeed been radically transformed by computational power. Historically, scientists relied on a painstakingly slow process of trial and error, manually testing thousands of chemical compounds to see if they might interact with a disease target. Today, AI models can sift through vast digital libraries containing billions of molecular structures in a fraction of the time. This computational sprint dramatically accelerates the initial identification of promising candidates, compressing years of traditional laboratory work into mere weeks. The cornerstone of this early-stage revolution is machine learning, a subset of AI where algorithms improve their performance by analyzing vast amounts of data rather than following explicit programming instructions. By training on decades of chemical and biological data, these systems learn to predict how different molecules will behave. The most famous example of this breakthrough came from DeepMind, an artificial intelligence research laboratory that unleashed a system known as AlphaFold. AlphaFold solved a 50-year-old grand challenge in biology known as the protein folding problem. Proteins are the microscopic machines driving almost every biological process in the human body, and their function is dictated entirely by their complex three-dimensional shapes. Previously, determining the shape of a single protein could take years of expensive laboratory work. AlphaFold accurately predicted the structures of nearly all known proteins, providing a massive open-source map for researchers. Armed with this map, AI-powered drug discovery platforms could suddenly identify exactly where a new chemical compound might bind to a disease-causing protein, effectively designing a custom key for a microscopic lock. The implications for the biotechnology sector were immediate and staggering. Venture capital poured into startups promising to leverage machine learning chemistry to conquer previously untreatable diseases. Pharmaceutical giants partnered with tech firms, betting billions on the premise that algorithms could outsmart traditional research and development constraints. The drug development pipeline appeared to be permanently optimized, with the initial discovery phase functioning at unprecedented efficiency. However, identifying a perfectly shaped molecule on a computer screen is only the starting line of a grueling marathon. The critical barrier lies in the transition from experiments performed via computer simulation to those involving living organisms. A digitally designed molecule might bind flawlessly to a target protein in a simulated environment, but human biology is infinitely more chaotic than a pristine digital model. Once introduced into a living system, that same molecule might be instantly destroyed by stomach acid, filtered out by the kidneys before it reaches the target, or, most dangerously, bind to unintended proteins and cause severe toxic side effects. This biological unpredictability demands rigorous real-world validation, a phase that algorithms cannot simply bypass. Scientists must synthesize the physical compound in a laboratory, a process that can be surprisingly difficult even when the digital blueprint is perfect. They must then test it in cell cultures and animal models to evaluate basic safety and efficacy. These wet lab experiments require physical time for cells to grow, react, and metabolize. No amount of computing power can force a biological organism to process a chemical faster than its natural biological clock allows. If a candidate survives this preclinical gauntlet, it enters the most rigorous, expensive, and time-consuming phase of all, which is clinical trials. This human testing process is divided into multiple sequential phases, each designed to answer specific medical questions. Phase 1 trials involve a small group of healthy volunteers to determine baseline safety and dosage. Phase 2 expands to a larger group of patients who actually have the disease, looking for initial signs of efficacy and monitoring side effects. Finally, Phase 3 requires testing the drug on hundreds or thousands of patients across multiple demographics and geographic locations to definitively prove that it works better than existing standard treatments. Overseeing this entire progression are stringent regulatory bodies, most notably the FDA in the United States. The mandate of the FDA is to protect public health, requiring exhaustive, scientifically sound proof of both safety and efficacy before granting approval. The agency does not evaluate a drug based on how elegantly it was designed by an AI. It evaluates the hard clinical data gathered from human subjects. Gathering this data requires recruiting eligible patients, administering the treatment over months or years, and meticulously tracking every physiological change. The economic and temporal realities of this human testing phase are brutal. Patient recruitment alone is notoriously difficult, often delaying trials by months or years as clinics struggle to find individuals who meet strict medical criteria. Furthermore, the human body is incredibly diverse. A drug that works perfectly in a genetically homogeneous animal model might fail completely in a diverse human population. As a result, approximately 90% of drugs that enter clinical trials ultimately fail, representing a massive loss of invested capital and time. Recognizing that the discovery bottleneck has merely shifted downstream, the industry is now pivoting its computational strategies. Forward-looking companies are asking how AI can be utilized not just to invent drugs, but to optimize the clinical trials themselves. This involves deploying algorithms to analyze vast repositories of electronic health records, identifying optimal geographical locations for trial sites, and pinpointing specific patient populations most likely to respond positively to the treatment. By streamlining patient recruitment, companies hope to shave precious months off the trial timeline. Another frontier involves the use of generative AI, a type of artificial intelligence capable of creating entirely new data, text, or images based on learned patterns. In the context of clinical research, generative models are being explored to create synthetic patient data. These digital patient profiles mirror the statistical properties of real human populations without compromising individual privacy. Researchers can use this synthetic data to simulate how a clinical trial might unfold before recruiting a single real patient, allowing them to optimize trial protocols and anticipate potential failure points early in the process. Furthermore, AI is being leveraged to discover novel biomarkers, which are measurable indicators of a biological state or condition. By analyzing complex datasets from blood tests, genetic sequencing, and medical imaging, algorithms can identify subtle patterns that indicate whether a drug is working long before outward clinical symptoms improve. This capability could allow researchers to run shorter, smaller trials, dramatically reducing costs while still providing the robust evidence required by regulatory agencies. The narrative surrounding artificial intelligence in medicine is maturing from unchecked hype to strategic pragmatism. Business leaders and investors are realizing that AI is not a magic bullet that can instantly bypass the complexities of human biology or the necessity of rigorous safety testing. Instead, it is a profoundly powerful accelerator, a tool that fundamentally changes the economics of the pharmaceutical pipeline by ensuring that only the most highly optimized, deeply understood molecular candidates ever make it to the expensive human testing phase. The journey from a digital concept to a life-saving medication will always be governed by the intricate, unyielding realities of the human body. Yet, as algorithms evolve to tackle the logistical and biological hurdles of clinical trials, the gap between computational speed and medical delivery is beginning to narrow. The future of AI-powered drug discovery lies not just in designing the perfect molecule, but in engineering a smarter, faster, and more resilient path to the patients who need it most.